When it comes to doing stringing inlay, I have an issue. This gap is too big. I have an idea. I can make a zero clearance inset for my table saw. I need a template that I know will work for the shape. Just use the original plate inset. My saw has a lip that I have to fit around on the inside. The first part of my inset will match the inner perimeter of the opening. I need to measure the depth I need to match the thickness of the new insert. It will rest on the screw tabs where the plate attaches. It looks like that depth comes out to exactly 1/4 inch. That's great, because I can use some 1/4 inch MDF without needing to plane down hardwood to that thickness. Of course, it's not that critical that this part is identically thick, but having it come close is really nice. I'll just trace around the original inset to get the general shape and size. Now I'll deduct the allowance for the lip, which ends up being kind of like a rabbit on the bottom of the inset. That comes out to 1/4 inch wide. Transfer that measurement to the tracing. I suppose you could use a router and a fence to create the rabbit and start with the full thickness, but in general, I don't like power tools that much, and this makes it easy for anyone to do, even without a router. 3.5. The bottom piece will be cut, making it 1/4 inch less all around than the original tracing from the metal inset. I'll take my little mouse push stick and run it through the saw. Whoops! My saw doesn't have a splitter and guards on the back that prevent this from happening. They don't work with a thinner kerf blade I have installed. The mouse also didn't hold the work tight enough to the surface. Let's try that again with my bigger bunny push stick instead of the mouse. That's better, but you can see why I want the zero clearance plate. Narrow strips fall back through the saw. The depth of the rabbit needed for my inset is only 0.092 inches. I have some hardboard that measures out to 0.110, just a bit more than I need, but nothing I can't take down with sandpaper later. Shape the ends of both parts on the bandsaw. The thinner top piece gets cut to full size. Don't worry too much here about getting exact. We'll take this down with a sander for a perfect fit. The 1/4 inch thick MDF gets trimmed 1/4 inch smaller all the way around to fit inside. It'll add a little bit of stiffness too. Just use an adjustable square to mark the 1/4 inch to cut away from the end. Take note of any areas that need to be trimmed to fit. A little touch up on the sander brings the edges down smooth and fairs the curves. Both parts get sanded to fit their spaces. A dry test fit for the inset gets a thumbs up for a match. The top plate also seems to fit really well. No gaps, no bulges from trying to fit too big of a piece into a smaller space. Just what I want. Add a little wood glue, putting the glue on the smaller bottom plate. And a little more glue on the matching surface, but try and stay away from that 1/4 inch all the way around. A glue brush comes in handy to spread the glue on the entire surface of the inset parts. Kind of like coloring with glue. If a little glue goes past the sketch lines, that's okay. But you may have to clean up a little bit of glue off of your tabletop surface. It's probably better to have less squeeze out if possible. To make sure the plates are aligned correctly with the blade all the way down, just drop the parts into the saw, weight them down with something flat and heavy as a pressure clamp. When it's sufficiently dry, 20 minutes or so is plenty, mark the positions of the screws, again using the original plate. A centering punch comes in really handy for this task. Drill out the holes using a drill bit large enough for the screws to pass through, but not so large that the heads won't hold. Countersinking the holes first is a good idea, but this'll still work. Don't forget that the plate is really thin. Resist the temptation to go too deep. You don't want the screw heads above the surface of the inset, just enough so that the head of the screw is flush. Test for a flush fit with the table surface. If it's too high, you can always sand it down a bit, leaving it screwed in place. Sand until it's flush. I took just a little bit off the top, like freshening up a haircut. With the insert plate screwed down tight, turn on the saw and slowly raise the blade through the surface. Raise it all the way as high as the blade will go. And that's it, a simple zero clearance saw insert. Make it pretty if you want, or buff it with a little paste wax and let the wood slide across it easier. While you're at it, buff the rest of the cast iron surface. Your saw will love you for it. I hope you found this shop tip to be helpful. You can find this and other useful tips in our Shop Jigs playlist. Subscribers won't miss any of them.